I'm so excited about this because it's so fun to see a project come all the way together. And I'm really anxious to share with you guys the tips and tricks that I've learned as I've been quilting this, and to get your suggestions of how you would quilt your quilt. If you are interested in, and let me go ahead and get the thing on so that if you're interested in learning about where to get the pattern for the modern squared chic quilt, or even where to get the pumpkin squares or anything else that I'm talking about, you can just say, send me the information, send me the pattern or whatever, and all of that will go to you. There's a link in the app. So, but today we are working squared chic quilt. It is making this quilt. The last video tutorial was on how to layer your quilt, and I hope you felt that that was kind of helpful. It gives you a glimpse of how I actually layer my quilt and do things for that. So, but today we are going to get going on this one, and I am going to show you how I have been quilting this, because I've already done some quilting on this. And what color thread do you think would be the best thread to use with this? What color backing? Hi, Jane. What color backing should we do? All of those kinds of things. I really want all your inputs and ideas. And I've got 2 different color threads that I've been testing on this quilt, which is the crib size version of this. And oh, you just got your pattern and fabric yesterday, Melissa. I am so glad. I hope you got your order fast. Did you get your order fast? We are trying so hard to ship everything right away. So, so here is the quilt top right here. Ta-da! It's so cute, and I love my quilt tops when it finally is layered and bound. So the quilt is the modern squared chic quilt. There is a fabric bundle you can get with it, and we are sending like a small gift with your, if you get the fabric bundle and your pattern or whatever, but you can buy the pattern just as a PDF, or buy the pattern as a PDF and a print copy, and I'll mail it to you. So, hi Patricia, hi Mary, and yes, Melissa, you got it faster than you expected, and that's what we try to do at Stitches Quilting. We carry kind of a select amount of things, but definitely when we have kits to ship and patterns and things like that, we really try hard to ship it fast. So you guys are getting your stuff. Now, just a quick recap. On Monday, we layered the quilt, and remember, because I really love it when people buy a pattern, but they're able to start the quilt and then finish it, and even get it to the point where it's quilted and all of that. And I'm really trying to teach you guys. Oh, Jane, gray thread, red or black backing. I like that. Very, very nice. Okay, I love your input. Thank you. So let me know what thread you think would be good to quilt. Hi, Liz. Okay, right here, I was using binding clips with a piece of plywood on my dining room table to layer our quilt, the modern square quilt right here. I used safety pins to kind of get it pinned together. And where is the spray that just dropped? Oh, here it is. You can use like a spray, a temporary spray adhesive to go ahead and spray your layers together. Just depends on what you want. But I want you guys to feel successful with this, because I've got an easy way to quilt this quilt that I think looks beautiful. So I just want you guys to feel comfortable and capable. And what I love about this project is this quilt is just a great fast sew. You're working with your fabrics that you love, either from your stash. Hi, Margaret. Either from your stash of fabrics that you absolutely love and adore and have been dying to use, or with the quilt kit that we have shipped to you. And so it's good to feel like you're actually using what you have. Okay, remember you might use painter's tape if you're taping it to the the quilt. No quilt ever fits a piece of plywood perfectly, or you might you do that on the floor. Painter's tape is always helpful. And here's my safety pins that I showed you early, but I need this because we're gonna take safety pins out. Okay, so now let me give you some tips and tricks. So I actually used the buffalo black and white plaid for the backing. And at first I thought, well, I think I'd love to see this quilt with black thread. You know, I don't quilt with black thread very often. So I want to show you what the back side looked like, because I thought it would look good with this buffalo plaid. So you can see that we've got some black thread going through there. And I thought that looked really nice, and it looks really smart over here. But when I got to my cream toile right here, which I'm holding this upside down, which the toile fabrics are fun to use, but those black lines on the cream toile didn't look so fantastic. But then I didn't know what it was going to look like to actually put cream thread on the black fabric. So let me go ahead and show you what that looks like. So let me go ahead and, so on the other side, and I've got some tips to share with you, but right now we're working with the color thread. So here up at the top, you can see I did a couple runs with the black thread right there. Okay, and I came across, and then I did a run of the white thread, a cream. I'm actually using a cream. So you can see this kind of quilting along with the cream thread, which I think the cream looks really pretty on that red. And then it comes over here on the black, and I don't think it looks so bad. Okay, and then look at the toile now with the cream thread. So I think on this one, I didn't expect it. And let me show you the back. Yeah, so Betty, I think using the cream the whole way through, but I wanted to kind of show you guys a little bit of how to experiment with thread to get a sense of how you want to quilt it. But I agree, Betty, I think the cream looks fantastic. So here's the back of the quilt. You can see I've got a couple black lines here, which you can, well, it's right there on the black, but I think the cream looks really nice on my backing fabric too. So if you are if you have your quilt top finished and you are using these fabrics or fabrics similar to it, I would probably pick out a backing fabric that would be friendly to have cream thread on your backing fabric. Does that make sense? You know, which really anything I think looks good with the cream fabric. So I really like the way that this cream looks good. But I hope that you appreciate how I used the white and the black, and you can see the differences in kind of the effect that you get with the different color threads. Okay, now the next step on this quilt, which I'm going to hold this up, is remember this quilt is just 4 rows, okay? So we did 4 video tutorials, and you can go back if this is the first time you've seen this. We did video tutorials on how to make each one of the rows, and they went so fast. They went super, super fast. But when you are, after you have pinned your quilt or spray basted or whatever you did, what I want you to do is come back, and I want you to then stitch and kind of but stitch your quilt exactly where those rows are. So there's the 4 different rows, and I want you to go right where the rows are and do a stitch right along there, okay? And stabilize your quilt, because the sooner you can get pins out of your quilt, or the sooner you feel like your quilt is really stabilized, the more confident you're going to be on a domestic sewing machine. So the sooner that you can feel like the whole quilt is stabilized and get those extra safety pins out, is the sooner that you're going to be able to feel more confident of pushing it through your sewing machine. Okay, so hold on, I've got to move something in here. I've got my cute purse that Liz sent me, but it's a little bit too close for me to quilt on. Now, I was quilting this in my backyard with this beautiful fall weather on my sewing machine that's outside. And I'm sorry, I have a piece of carrot cake sitting right here. You guys, I nibbled on it. It was left over from last night's dinner. But I had a tiny bit on my finger. I had to wipe it off. Okay, so we are going to use a walking foot on. Hi, Lynette. It's so good to see you. Are you doing home teaching from offline learning with your grandkids today? But we are going to use a walking foot. I was actually sewing this earlier this morning. Oh my gosh, I have surprises to show you at the end of the video. I cannot wait to show you. But I finished the Live Well, Live Strong quilt in negative space, and it's sitting right here. I woke up super early this morning to finish quilting it, and it is so beautiful. And I can't wait to show you how I quilted it and what it looks like, and it's in the coral ombre. Oh my. You guys, there's just so many wonderful things to do. So I just put my walking foot on my sewing machine. It is good to have a walking foot that you're using. Let's switch the camera view to the overhead camera, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to stitch on those lines of the rows to stabilize the quilt. Okay, so let's go ahead and go right here. I'm going to move that ruler away. Sometimes I kind of clear off my space that I'm working with so I can have the room when I'm working with a quilt. On this quilt, I am just doing simple lines across. So you can see here, I'm just doing simple lines across. So this is such an easy sew on your domestic sewing machine. You don't need to be overwhelmed. And my stitch length that I'm using is a 3.5. So I think that 3.5 stitch length is looking really nice, and it looks good. Okay, so you can see right here, this is the seam between row 1 and row 2 is right here. So I went ahead and I stitched along there with my 3.5 inch stitch length. Okay, so now we're going to go to the between row 2 and 3. So row 2 and 3 starts right here. So right here to here. So we're going to just stitch all the way down this quilt. You can see I've kind of got a safety pin right there in the way. So I can move this safety pin over because that's where I want to stitch. And I'm just doing basic rows. I am not measuring. Well, actually, this is the row between row 3 and 4. I'm not measuring or trying to keep track of my rows. I am just going ahead and just sewing rows across, and I'm also not making them be perfectly straight. So when there's just random rows that are there, I'm going to take out the safety pin as I move, because the lighter that this quilt is not difficult to move around and wrestle on your domestic sewing machine, the easier you're going to be able to do it, finish it, and execute it, and get a finished quilt top. And that is the absolute goal. I have some things on the other side of that sewing machine that I want to show you guys before the end of the video. Boy, it sure feels good when you get to finish up a quilting project. So you can see here, hi Susan, it's good to see you. Betty, you really need more instruction on the machine quilting methods. I think we all do. Even when I go to my long arm, I get anxiety before quilting a quilt. I always think, am I quilting it good enough? Am I taking into account all the things that I want to do? Could there be a more special way I could do it? And I think we always, sometimes feel self-doubt. Okay, so now I've got everything on my rows my rows are quilted in there. So now I'm going to just start working in between these two stitches right here and just do a line. And I'm not going to try to be perfectly straight or anything else. Once this quilt is washed, which I am going to wash this quilt, and I have not pre-washed my fabrics, I will use color catchers when I am washing this. You guys may be different. I've got threads going different directions. I will use color catchers when I wash this quilt, but when you wash it, everything will shrink up and you're not going to be able to focus on whether or not a line is perfectly straight. So I'm just kind of guiding my way and eyeballing my way between these two lines. And if you don't have the entire quilt perfectly straight, then all of your lines are going to look great. You just need to be consistently inconsistent. okay, because then everything looks really good to the eyes. And remember this quilt, and we can throw in, oh, let me go ahead and pull this off. We can throw in an occasional wave of a line, and that wave is going to kind of throw it off so that we don't see everything. I'm going to come back up here to the front of the quilt. So this is the top of the quilt, the first row. I'm going to go ahead and finish quilting this row. So I'm also not making sure that my stitching lines are equal distances between each other. So you can see right here, I've got a line over here and I've got a line here. So I'm going to now just stitch in the ditch on this one. So we're not going to try to make sure everything is equally distanced. Remember, this quilt top is you've randomly placed, I'm rolling up my fabric here. You can see how I'm rolling it up to go through the throat of my sewing machine. So I'm just putting this kind of rolled up right here. Whoop. Okay. Wait a minute. I wonder if I hit, let me make sure when I move my machine over to make sure all my plugs are perfectly still in. So we want things to look, and I'm going to show you my next row. Now I'm going across this toile right here. I'm going to take off these pins because this is definitely, and I'm going to put them back in my jar. You know, this jar used to be full. Do you guys have things like this where things just kind of get lost? It's like socks for me, my safety pins are. But I have a lot of different workstations. I work in here, I work outside, I have a cutting room, and we're gonna let that walking foot just feed this through and just gently follow it through. Oh, I think I'm losing a few things, but that's okay. I might move a couple things I wanted to show you guys, but that's all right. So we definitely want to give space for your quilt on the surface that you're working on. And you'll feel better about that. You'll feel less awkward. Now, what I'm going to do right here is I'm actually going to do a line that's closer to this line. So I want to stagger the width of the lines, remember? Because it will just look pleasing to the eye and everything will look balanced if you occasionally just stagger. So let's go ahead and bring this over, and I'm going to do one that's really close to that line. Okay? And we're going to just occasionally throw these lines in and just feed the quilt through. I cannot wait to put a binding on here. What binding do you guys think would be beautiful on this quilt? Because I already have a large one, so this will eventually become a gift for me to give to somebody as the crib. Well, I don't know. It's a pretty big crib. It's about 45 inches to 60 inches, which is a pretty big crib. I don't think I'd make a crib quite this large. It's more like a lap quilt. So you can see how beautiful that this is coming together. So just make sure that when you're doing this, so you can see right here, as I measure, I've got, let me turn this little ruler over. This is about 1.5 inches of a space, maybe 1.25. This one is 1.5. So this is about 1.25 from this distance to here. 1.5. This is 1 inch distance. This one right here is about 1.5 again. We've got a 1 inch distance, and I think a 2 inch would look really good here now. So you can see how I'm putting, and over here, this distance is almost 3 inches. So I'm just kind of staggering the width of the lines, all right? I'm not making, and over here's my black line, but there's about 1.5 inches in between that. So let's go ahead and do a 2 inch stagger here. And you can see, and I can just kind of get an idea, I could also put on my guide on the back of my walking foot. And that'll maybe help you have more confidence. but I'm just pushing this through, keeping an eye of what the distance is. Plus I'm working with some nice plaids, you know, that I can kind of follow the lines of those plaids. Here's another safety pin, so I need to move that. But I definitely have this quilt stabilized to the point that I can kind of take out all those pins. Hold on, I'm gonna move this behind me because I just don't want to feel like things are falling over on this side. I'm pretty silly. I should have cleared my space a little bit better. Okay, let's bring this up. But I'm so excited to bind this. Okay, so let's see here. Cream or black, Deanna quilts like me, you just go for it. And you know what? You do. You just go for it. Don't try. I mean, you can, if you've got a really organized quilt block, you can really go ahead and just, you know, do something really organized. And go ahead and just have but this is not a traditional quilt block. And that's what's fun about it. And, you know, modern quilting really has, I mean, these straight lines like matchstick quilting, I mean, is really, really a modern way to do quilting. Let's go ahead and do a 3-inch width here. And so that's about right here at this buffalo. Right there. So let's go ahead and bring this down. Now, and I also want to show you my guide to my walking foot that you can use to help get those lines. But I'm going to put an occasional wavy line in here. So let's do this one, and then I'm going to show you the occasional wavy line. But we're doing it a lot bigger and bolder. Remember, if you're using a good quality batting, I like to use Warm and Natural. I've got an 80% wool and a 20% cotton, and it's a nice thin batting. That's a traditional bat, but as long as you've got things quilted about 4 inches apart, your batting will be safe. So this typically, the top of your palm is about 3 to 4 inches, depending on, you know, what people. So I know I need to, you know, kind of quilt things about that distance. Now, when I come over here, I can go ahead and check. I can see I'm right on point with that 3 inches right there. You could make your lines look super perfect. It's up to you. It's your quilt, but I'm just trying to give you a viable way of quilting your quilt without being too overwhelmed about it. Now, we're going to see what our cream thread looks like on this red toile. So let's go ahead and see what this looks like. And I am going to also show you a wavy line in here. But let's go ahead and quilt this with this red toile. Okay, let's cut that thread and see that cream on there. Okay, whoops. As I paused, I shifted just a little bit. But I may go down. In fact, I should make sure my needle is needled down. I don't know why I'm doing that. But that doesn't look too bad on there with that cream on that red. I think that looks just fine. So let's go back. And we're going to do a wavy line now here. Okay? And I'm going to do it one more time up in this where we have some other straight lines. So I'm going to show you how to do the wavy line where we have just open area where you don't have to see other, see it with other threads, okay? But all I do is I start this, I'm going to roll this up, and I'm going to just come down and gently have that line go back and forth. And it's just going to gently go back and forth. I'm not doing it in really any organized way. I want to be consistently inconsistent. Here's another safety pin to take out. And I will need to take out this one too. So let's go ahead and do this. I can't wait to wash this and see it shrink up with the thread and the fabric shrinking around the thread and giving it that quilted look. Okay, now let's go ahead and take a look at this wavy line. Okay, so here is, you can see this wavy line right here. It's just meandering ever so gently right across here, and you can particularly see it on the reds. Here it is on the red buffalo plaid. Okay, that looks great, but let's go ahead and combine that now with a straight line. So I'm going to show you over here, right in this segment right here, there isn't as much quilting, or I could also go right up here. We'll go right here. And you know what? A lot of times I don't have to, whoops, I've got another bobbin thread coming out of my case there. We can go ahead and flip this around. So let's go ahead and do, I want to show you that wavy line. How about right here? Okay. So let's do it right here because we've got a little bit bigger of a distance right there. And I'm going to just kind of go right on top of one of those other lines and just gently curve that around. And I will continue to quilt this, but I just want you guys to see the effects of what it looks like as you quilt randomly on a quilt. Okay, there we go. You can measure your straight lines too. I'm just trying to give you guys, so you can see that little gentle line that's coming right through there, and it really gives it a softer texture to those straight lines. All right, so let me go ahead and go down here a little farther, and I'm going to add another wavy line right here, and this will be our last little line that we go through. Okay. But I think, so I will continue quilting this today, and then I will have a picture that I will post it for you, or on our next live video, show you the actual finished quilt with all of the quilting on it, with it washed, and with it. And I will put several color catchers in the wash when I wash this quilt. Okay, so here we go. So you can see how nice and gentle that wavy line is right there. And it will just really mirror what's going on up here. I'm going to put some more straight lines through here and continue this along down the quilt. So anyways, let's switch the camera to the front camera and I will show you the other quilt that I just quilted today. Or just finished. I got it, I pulled it off my long arm. But you can see how that looks like that when you've got just some gentle straight lines going through and then an occasional wavy line. And you've got something that's really pretty and that's quilted very nice and that's manageable to put through your own domestic sewing machine. So this is definitely a great option. There's so many ways to quilt this quilt though. And I can't wait to see all of the different ideas that you guys have and how you are going to finish this quilt and make it look like yours, because that's the best part of all of us quilting together, is seeing what each other come up with. Okay, so let me show you the big surprise. Here is the traditional Live Well, Live Strong quilt. So I know you guys have probably seen this. But you can see this quilt right here. I'm going to have some new videos post about this in just a minute. But this is the Live Well, Live Strong quilt with negative space, you guys. Look at this. Is that not just so beautiful? It's hard to show you this quilt. This is, I want to say 74 inches by 94. Is the dimensions of this. So I believe that this is a full-size quilt. It's very easy to make this quilt be queen or king by just adding additional fabric on your sides. So this is all of the Live Well, Live Strong quilt blocks, but they were sewn together with ombre fabrics. We did a coral ombre fabric, and then we used a white background for negative space for this quilt. So I just think it's so beautiful, but you can see on this quilt, it has not been washed. I need to put the binding on, but you can see on this quilt, I did the same quilting technique where I did just straight random lines with an occasional wave. So you can see what that quilting technique, what it looks like on a large scale quilt, and it was very easy to do. So this is actually the strength quilt block, which part of that is resilience. We've got self-reliance right here. We've got all the different quilt blocks, but I am so excited about this quilt. I can't even tell you. And we have some new color versions that are coming for you guys, which is so exciting. So the Live Well, Live Strong Sew Along will start on Monday. So we're going to start a new sew along. And the pattern is right here. You can go purchase the pattern at Stitches Quilting. Yes, Liz, it is really beautiful, and it's so big. It's definitely something to cozy up to, something you can put on a bed. You could make it smaller by not putting on those other white strips, but you can also make it bigger. So it depends on what you want to do. We are also doing the quilt as a bed runner. So this is the pattern. But we're doing it as a bed runner, and a bed runner is something that you often see in hotel rooms. You can slip into bed and it'll keep your feet warm, but not necessarily your whole top of the bed. So it's about 45 inches by about 90 inches. So it drapes along the top of the bed, but it's only about 45 inches wide. And that's a beautiful option or way to sew together your blocks for the Live Well, Live Strong quilt. And that one we're doing in a 4-color way. It's so beautiful. We are also doing it as a paper piecing way. And so these are the quilt blocks. So the Shine quilt block, the Boundaries quilt block. It's always good to have healthy boundaries with people, right? The Calm quilt block, and trying to feel peace. And as we sew together each one of these quilt blocks, so you can choose to do your quilt any different way. You can do it as the traditional one that I showed you, the first quilt. They're at 60 by 60 inches. Or this is the Belong quilt block, where we need to belong to communities to help ourselves feel better and to feel good about ourselves. So